Next up is the venerable, highly sought after, it seems, very well respected Sansui 5000X. Get my camera game right here. Here we go. So, Sansui 5000X. I have to date this one. I want to say I dated this one to 71. I'm pretty sure this is from 1971, but I'll flash the date up here by looking at the serial number. I'll also see if I can include a screenshot for one of the databases, the online databases that I use for researching the dates when these things were manufactured. So 60 watts per channel, again, 1971, 72. I think maybe 70 as well, but I'm not sure. Typical receiver dimensions, 35.5 pounds or 33 pounds, I think. As far as the series information, so the 5000X came third, right? You had the Sansui 5000. And here's the thing about the 5000. So I looked on Hi-Fi Engine, and it said that the 5000 was 75 watts per channel, and I don't believe what they have posted is correct. I think it's 50. I found 50 in other spots on the internet. Then you had the 5000A. 5000A was 55 watts per channel, right? Actually, I think the 5000 may have been 55 watts per channel as well. Again, you can only go by what you find, and you find so many different sources of information. So 55 watts per channel for the 5000A. In terms of the 5000X, we're talking 60 watts, like I mentioned. And then of the catalog that I pulled down from 1971, the other receivers that accompanied the 5000X in the catalog were the 200, the 350, maybe a 350A, 350. 1000X, the 2000A, could be 2000X, whatever image I flash up. It's been a busy morning so far. And then what I consider my favorite, the Sansui 4000. I think it's pound for pound one of the best Sansui receivers. And not to say this is not a fantastic receiver, because it absolutely is a fantastic receiver. But the 4000 it just fits in kind of a sweet spot for me. I always like the underdogs. So if you haven't caught on, I like Macintosh gear. I have a lot of Macintosh gear, but I love old Sony because there's value in old Sony. And for those that watch the channel, you'll see that I'm kind of a watch guy as well. And I'll wear, different watches. And, I've always wanted like a Rolex. I don't have a Rolex. I think there are good Rolexes. There are bad Rolexes. But I prefer like Seiko's. Seiko reissues. I really like Omega. Although that is a high-end watch brand, but I don't buy the high-end Omegas. I buy the ones that are kind of tool watches that I can get, on sale and stuff. So anyway, what I was getting at was, although this was top of the line for stereo receivers in 71, the 4000 is every bit as good as the 5000X, in my opinion. And I've had a lot. One thing I do appreciate more on the 5000 though, the 5000X, is the dial display, and I'll get into the kind of what's going on with this receiver and how it works here in a minute. But in terms of, the 5000X classic early 70s, late 60s Sansui design, I mean, this is one of the quintessential, early 70s receivers. It's capacitor coupled, so nice warm sound, definitely the Sansui sound. If you prescribe to, there being a signature Sansui or Marantz or Pioneer sound, to me it's more of a direct couple, cap couple sound, or maybe even not really an era, but the late 60s, early 70s stuff kind of sounds the same. The mid 70s stuff kind of sounds the same. The late 70s stuff kind of sounds the same. You're right. So, and again, maybe that's just me. Operation for this. So hookups in the back, typical RCA hookups, spring-loaded speaker connects, super simple to use. I mean, super simple to connect things to. In terms of operation, right? Operation is pretty simple on this as well. You've got, right now I have the speakers off because I don't have any speakers connected to it. So power button, you have off, A, B, C. but you can only run 2 sets of speakers at a time, A and B or A and C. This one I just repaired because someone had purchased it, and there's a cautionary tale here. So this someone had repaired this with some mismatched output transistors that weren't probably the best substitutions, right? And they only it was like basically I had like 4 different individual output transistors. And so I went in and I updated the outputs with 1149 and no 1194, 1193 Gs. So MJE 1190. Oh, I'll flash them up here. I don't remember. Again, it's been a long morning so far. But anyway, so even though on old gear you can run 2 sets of speakers, unless it's a quad, I would be very, very careful in doing so. So you take an old receiver like this and you can hook up 2 8-ohm sets of speakers. If you have vintage speakers, chances are they're no longer 8-ohm, right? They were 8-ohm 50 years ago. So a lot of the vintage speakers that I come across, there's no way they're 8-ohm. They're more like 6 or 5, and you can't just assume that those old speakers aren't going to, right, tax one of these and cause some damage. At least that's my theory. I've had several receivers come back, some that I've completely recapped, where someone has been running 2 sets of speakers. They're driving them pretty hard, and the next thing you know, they release the magic smoke, and I'm fixing it again. And I'm like, well, what were you doing? Well, I was listening to it loud on 2 sets of speakers. I'm like, yeah, not real good on these old receivers. So anyway, at least that's my hypothesis on what's going on with these. Then you have a low filter, high filter, bass and treble, and these are split, right? Bass and treble are split, I believe. So you have split controls for bass and treble, so you can adjust bass and treble per channel if you want to. You have the mic level and the balance, right? So mic level and balance. It's a split control as well. This looks like balance is the outer ring and mic level is the inner ring. So that's what this looks like anyway. No, this is mic level. Yeah, mic level is this and balance is that, which I've never even paid attention to that. Then you have volume. You've got tape, right? 1 and 2. And then you've got your selector knob, phono 1 and 2, auxiliary FM, FM auto, and AM. You have the tuner knob. You have a mono button, a reverse, and FM stereo only, muting off, loudness. And then you've got standard dial face with 2 different meters, one for signal strength and then a tuning meter. So, but there's nothing real different here, nothing real complicated here. Like the Sony, sometimes they can get a little complicated when you're selecting your input on the back. In terms of working on one of these, I would say this is nothing super tricky, not the simplest, not the most difficult, kind of smack dab right in the middle. The outputs were really easy to replace. I didn't do a video on it because I was just kind of trying to get through this quickly, and sometimes I just don't shoot video on everything. I do have a 5000X video. I replaced lamps or something like that on it, so you can see the inside in the other video. I may flash an image up here, I'm not sure. But I haven't found the ones that I've worked on to be too incredibly tricky to work on. Let's see, serviceability, intermediate. There were a ton of these that were made. There are a ton of these that are for sale all the time on eBay. Parts aren't really an issue with these, at least from what I have found. Common problems with these that I have come across, FM, and really Sony. Seems like Sony and Sansui had some FM issues, probably more per capita than Pioneer. I may be lumping Sansui in with Sony, but it seems like I've come across a couple of these with FM issues. So FM issues, the big one on the 5000 series. So this was resolved, right, with the 5000X, but there's a board in here. And I can't remember what the board is. I don't know if it's a power supply board or a preamp board or an amplifier board. Again, I'll flash it up here on the screen. But they came with a board. The number was 1040. And those boards, when they were initially released, were a fire hazard, right? So they would overheat and they could potentially catch fire. There was a mod that came out to address the issue with those boards at some point in time. And then eventually they were replaced with a 6013 board. So if you see one, a 5000 in any of the series, I think if you see a 6013, it's good. If you see a 1040, it may or may not be good because it may or may not have been modified. And there are sources of information out there to determine which one you have if you want to confirm that. So you have to be aware of the board issues. These came with or without a cabinet, but the thing about the Sansuis, the 4000s, the 5000s, there are just as many of these that go up for sale with the cabinet than without. In fact, I think there are more that have the cabinet. So, with old Sonys, with Macintosh, it's almost reversed at times where you can find them outside, without the cabinet. But with these, it seemed like they sold a lot of them inside the cabinet, which is nice because I think these look really, really, really good with the wooden cabinet if the wooden cabinet is in decent shape. So in terms of price on these, restored, you're looking at probably around the $800 mark, somewhere $750, $800, something like that. If it's been recapped and gone through. This one, someone else had gone in and done some work. They didn't do a complete recap on it. I haven't really messed with it because it was working for a long time for the owner until they connected the multiple sets of speakers to it. Which you can't blame people for doing that. But it's kind of like an old car. You don't buy a 50-year-old car and then go screaming down the interstate at 100 miles an hour for 500 miles. You may be asking for trouble. So restored about $800. Working, so I would consider this a working model, right? A few repairs here and there. Everything is good. It adjusts fine. It works fine. It sounds fantastic. Cosmetically, it's super clean. In fact, there's not even a blemish on the cabinet, which is really nice. You're looking at around $600, right? $600 for one in this condition. That's what this one will go out on the floor at, about $600. Because it's in really good shape, it has new outputs. So $600-ish. The cool thing about these is you can get them for parts pretty reasonably. If you are very careful and take some time, you can probably pick one up for around $300, maybe a little bit less. May or may not have the cabinet, right? May or may not be missing a knob, but again, these are a little bit easier to find because they made so many of them. In fact, I have extra knobs that I think I still have extra knobs that I came across where I was missing a knob on one, and I bought a whole set because it was cheaper to buy the whole set than to buy the individual knob. It went out on eBay and I snatched it up right away. So, they're pretty easy to find. So again, $300-ish. You have to be careful. Make sure it's a 5000X. You can get an 5000A or a 5000 even cheaper. And they're every bit as good. I think aesthetically this one is nicer. And again, you have the peace of mind that that 1040 board has been replaced with the 6013 on these. Because from what I understand, that was a design change for this particular model in the series. Now, naturally, those prices can be plus or minus, with or without a cabinet. But the nice thing is, if it doesn't have the cabinet, you're not talking the typical, $300 cabinet for like a Macintosh, Macintosh is the one that typically comes to mind. Even Sony, if you find a Sony cabinet, people want, $250 for them, which is kind of insane. So, I think you're typically talking like $100 difference between cabinet and no cabinet, which I think makes it pretty nice. Oh, Stell is barking. So that wraps it up for the Sansui 5000X. That's my signal to go take care of the dog. As always, if you like what you see, like, hit subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.